So today, we are doing the great initiation of the great compassionate deity, Avalokiteshvara. So this particular initiation, first of all, generally, the teaching of the Buddha, usually I say, I make this division into the general structure teaching of the Buddha and the specified or teaching. So these terms are used by one Tibetan scholar, great master Nyingwen Tsongkhapa, and then I have elaborated on these terms, and I usually say that the Sutra teachings, the first turning of the wheel, the second turning of the wheel, and the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, these teachings were given according to the general structure of the Buddhism. And then with regard to the secret mantrayana, the Buddha gave certain Kriya Tantra teachings, himself appearing in the form of a celibate monk, but most of the other tantric teachings were given with the Buddha arising in the form of the chief deity of the mandala. And so these are the specified specifically tailored for specific disciples. So because of their the beings to whom these tantric teachings were given, due to their difference in physiological structure, such as the channels, wind energies, and drops, and so forth, and therefore, and mental dispositions, therefore these specified teachings were given, specifically tailored for specific disciples. So it seems to make this kind of distinction is right in this way. So today's tantric initiation comes under the second category, the specific teachings tailored for specific disciples. So in India, there was no distinction between the later and the old and new schools of Tantra as such, but since the time of the great Tibetan translator Rinchen Sangpo, the teachings that spread in Tibet, the Tantric teachings, are called New Translation, and whereas before that is the Old Translation School. And so within the Old Translation School, there is the distant lineage of the Karma, the Buddha's teaching, the words of the Buddha, and then the near lineage of the Dharma, the revealed hidden treasure teachings, and then the third one is the profound visionary teachings. And so this particular initiation of Avalokiteshvara comes through from the fifth Dalai Lama, Gyalwang Losang Gyatso. And so he had many visions of special deities, and then received initiations and also entrustment of lineage and so forth. So there are many different types of teachings that he received in his visions, and they are compiled in what is known as the 25 cycle of visionary teachings of the Dalai Lama. And so this particular initiation of Avalokiteshvara comes from this cycle of visionary teachings, 25 cycle. And so since the fifth Dalai Lama, the 25 visionary teachings have become what is known as literally Poacher, which means father teaching of the Dalai Lamas. And so I have received this whole cycle of visionary teachings from the Tharda Rinpoche in Tibet when I was young. And then I did many of the approximation retreats of the various deities of this cycle of teaching. And so every month on the 10th day of the Tibetan lunar calendar, since the 13th Dalai Lama, there has been this practice of doing the Avalokiteshvara ritual. In the beginning, when I came to Exile, I didn't have the text, but eventually I got these 25 visionary teaching texts, and then I have been doing this the 10th day ritual of Avalokiteshvara. And so in Vaasa, there is in Potala there is the Avalokiteshvara tanka. So this was the main image of Avalokiteshvara in Potala. And in the Jokang temple, there is the Jo. And then there is the third statue of Avalokiteshvara, Wati Sangpo, which were brought to Tibet from India and Nepal. So the fifth Dalai Lama, when he did the retreat he brought these three statues of Avalokiteshvara together. So what is Sangpo, the generous, the Avalokiteshvara's image in Potala and the one in Vaasa. And so when during his retreat he had many visions of the different deities that emerged from the heart of Wati Sangpo, the Avalokiteshvara, which is so this is how the visions of the fifth Dalai Lama came. So in the beginning, I thought of doing the 1,000 armed, 1,000-eyed Chandrisik Avalokiteshvara initiation here. And then I did some divination or some examination, and I found that to do the Lokeshvara initiation of this particular cycle of teaching came out to be good. And the western upper part of Tibet, and the Wati Sangpo statue of Avalokiteshvara, which was in the upper part of India, Tibet in Kirong, the western Tibet, was able to be brought out of Tibet by the Dzongkapa monks and others, and so it had reached Dharamsala, and so the statue of Wati Sangpo Avalokiteshvara which is in Dharamsala now. So Dzongkapa monks also say that that the expression on the statue changes. So there's such a saying, and the statue today is in my residence. So when I look at the face of Wati Sangpo, I've seen changes happening, and it. And sometimes he looked very serious without smile or laughter. And then when I do some prayers of bodhicitta and so forth, and then it looked very smiley. So this happens regularly, but of course there's not much meaning to this. I also had a dream of Bodhisattva one time, and in that dream I was actually talking to him like a person to person, and I asked him whether he realized emptiness, and he said yes, and I again asked him whether he had realized emptiness directly, and he said yes. So this Bodhisattva statue has a very special connection. I have a very special connection with it. So you, some of you actually believe that the Dalai Lama is reincarnation of Avalokiteshvara, but that's your blind faith. But I act as a messenger of Avalokiteshvara. So Avalokiteshvara being the embodiment of compassion, and particularly the patron deity of deity. And so I always say that whether I am able to serve well or not, I am a messenger of Avalokiteshvara. So I always feel that Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara is always on my shoulder. So Avalokiteshvara, of course, remains in somewhere in the space up there, but when to actually deliver his enlightened deeds to others, I am the one who is doing that. Someone who was born, the one who was born in Amdo. So Avalokiteshvara. It's very clear that I have a special karmic connection with him. And so there are Tibetans here, and also people from China. There are quite a number of you here. So you are the... So we call Xuanzang Tangsan Lama in Tibet. So Tangsan Lama or Xuanzang brought Buddhism from India to China. No, India to China, and he went to Nalanda. And at that time, one of the main disciples of Master Nagarjuna, Nagabodhi, there is a story that Xuanzang actually met him, Nagabodhi. So the Buddhism that has spread in China is in the lineage of Nalanda tradition. And from there, it's spread to Japan, Korea, and Vietnam. And then in Tibet, in the 7th and 8th centuries, the Buddhism was spread, particularly in the 8th century, by Master Chandarakshita from a Nalanda monastic institution, and it spread from Tibet to Mongolia, inner and outer Mongolia, inner Mongolia under the Chinese PRC, and then the independent Mongolia, outer Mongolia, and then also it spread to the 3 republics of Russia, Kalmykia, Buryatia, and Tuva. And so you follow the same tradition as Tibetans. So we are all followers of the same Nalanda tradition, in other words. So in the past, in Tibet, there was the tradition of making statues or images of this, what are known as the 6 ornaments and 2 supreme masters. So amongst them, Buddhapalita, Bhaviveka, Chandrakirti, Shantadeva, Vimukti Sena are missing. So we actually study the texts written by these masters as well. And so on top of the 6 ornaments and 2 supreme masters, and there is also prayer to them, and there is custom of making these images of them, these masters. And then I added some more Nalanda masters and to make up for 17 Nalanda masters. Today we don't have the image of the 17 Nalanda masters here, but those countries which actually uphold the Nalanda, the Sanskrit tradition of Buddhism, for us, the tradition is being established, which is established through reason and logic, are these masters, 17 Nalanda masters. So their teachings are the ones that we uphold. So we don't need to go into history as such, but if we actually read their own writings, for example, writings of Master Nagarjuna, we can read it, we can actually think through and analyze the teachings, his teachings as well. And so these profound and well-written teachings, of course, and Kudun Lama Tenzin Gyaltsen Rinpoche told me that the Mula Madhyamaka Karika in Sanskrit is a very high standard of Sanskrit, and also Dharmakirti's Pramana Vartika in Sanskrit was a very high standard of Sanskrit. So of course these are Buddhist texts, but many Indians say that these are very high quality Sanskrit writings, very high standard. And so they actually, I tell them that it would be good to study these texts. And so, what kind of people Master Nagarjuna and so forth were? We may talk about their, miracles going underground and flying in the sky and so forth. But if we read, I'm not so interested in them. But when we read their writings and actually study about how their teachings are meant for transforming our mind, then we'll see the reason for developing faith in the teaching of the Buddha. So reason-based faith. So when I was in Varanasi, the Sarnath Tibetan institution, I asked them, I told them that you don't have the 17 Nalanda master Thanga scrolls. And they said, yes, they had. But I said, it's not enough just to say you have, you must actually display them. So their writings are marvelous. Today, science is something that everyone in the world, east, west, south, north, science is something that everyone believes in. And this is not only through blind faith, and not because of following some kind of a fame, but actually through analysis, investigation, and research, people find science to be dealing with the facts. And so many of these scientific findings are found in the Nalanda Master's writings and more. So, of course, as I said before, I respect all religious traditions of the world because all of them are very beneficial to human beings. I never say that the Buddhism is the best religion. So if you actually examine the teaching of the Buddha and the Nalanda masters, the 17 Nalanda masters, you will actually see their profundity, and through their teachings we can actually sit together. And because of their teachings, we can sit together with the scientists and have dialogues. So everyone here are followers of the Nalanda tradition. The tradition, the Buddhism that we follow, go back to the Nalanda institution. So of the three types of teachings in the old translation Nyingma school, the distant lineage, the near lineage, and the profound lineage, this teaching, which comes within the category of the profound visionary teachings. So within the vision, there is a vision called Nyam. So the most important ones, the pure vision teachings, actually happen to the people who have the visions. They call it actually the deities appear to their eyes, not just to the Nyam, which is some kind of an experience within. And so the fifth Dalai Lama and the previous Dalai Lamas had visions. The first Dalai Lama, Gedun Drup, had visions. First, he studied under Tsongkhapa, and then after studying under him, he went to Tsang region of Tibet, and then practiced, staying in retreat. And in those times, he had visions of the white and green Taras, and therefore he wrote the praises to the Taras. And then the second Dalai Lama, Gendun Gyatso, right from his childhood, he was somebody who had much vision of the deities, and he also was someone who was able to compose at a very young age. And he was not able to stay in Tashilimbo, although in the beginning he was there. And then Benjen Yishit Tsemo, who was one of the chief disciples of the first Dalai Lama, and him, and had some kind of a discord, and therefore the second Dalai Lama was not able to stay in Tashilimbo. And so then that in Drepung there was an abbot whose name His Holiness said he couldn't remember, but this abbot had a vision or dream in which the Temachunyi, the 12 protector deities of Tibet, were carrying some monk on their shoulder to Drepung. And so he told the monks in Drepung that there will be somebody coming to our monasteries, please bring him in. And so he, the second Dalai Lama, studied there and became the abbot of Drepung, and then also he became abbot of Sera. So since the first Dalai Lama's time, the Palden Lhamo, the protected deity, goddess Palden Lhamo, had a very special connection with the Dalai Lamas as well. Tashil Himbo was even, the name Tashil Himbo was given by Palden Lhamo. So I once had a dream. I was on top of the Potala palace, and I was actually hearing the Drepung monastery tune of the offering of Torma to Palden Lhamo. And so somebody was telling me in my dream that this tune was actually composed by the Gendun Gyatso, the second Dalai Lama. So Drepung had a very beautiful tune of this deity, protected deity offering. And then the second Dalai Lama also founded Chogyal Monastery, and he also opened the door to Hamulatso, this sacred lake of Baldelhamo. And then he founded Dabongari Monastery, and there was already the Shedrubling, and so these three, Chongor-gyal, Ngari Drazang, and Shedrubling, were already known as the three monasteries connected with the second Dalai Lama. And then the third Dalai Lama came, and his enlightened deeds spread to Mongolia as well. And so it seems like there's a kind of a systematic, the plan that had been in place. And then the fourth Dalai Lama came, and then the fifth Dalai Lama became the temporal and spiritual head of Tibet. And so, if you look at history, you'll see how this development from the first Dalai Lama to the fifth Dalai Lama had happened. So, Buddhism in Tibet, the Nalanda tradition, which was introduced to Tibet by Master Chandrakshita, together with the King Chesong Detsen and Master Padmasambhava. This Nalanda tradition of Buddhism, which could be explained through reason and logic, which can be actually pondered, contemplated, and meditated upon. So this profound tradition that we have, the series of Dalai Lamas had been really leaving a great legacy in terms of the spread of this tradition. And so the 25 visionary cycles of teachings of the fifth Dalai Lama I had received from Tata Rinpoche when I was very young. And so each day after the initiations of that day, I had some dream connected with that particular initiation. And it seems that the previous Dalai Lama, the 13th Dalai Lama, had also visions. So amongst the 14 Dalai Lamas, I am the only one who has no visions of deities at all, but I still take consolation saying that though I have no visions, but I am the most famous Dalai Lama. And so personally, I was born in a very small village in Huinan, in Amdo, northwestern Tibet, near Kumbum, and in Hamulatso, the sacred lake of the Baldelhamo, there were these displays of the Akama letters, 3 letters of Akama, and then also the house where I was born. And these were actually written down, what the search party saw in the Al-Hamulatso actually was found to refer to Amdo, and Ka for Kumbum, and Ma is not very sure what it refers to, but from my point of view, because I was called Lamotundrup in my childhood, there is actually a prophecy by a Dakini who said that, which says that a boy will come with a name of, who goes by the name of female name. And so I consider Ma referring to me as having some female name, Lamotundrup. So I was born in the vicinity of where Tsongkhapa was born. So I usually say that we are from the same native place. So this, I just was relating some story related with this initiation of Avalokiteshvara. And so, as I said yesterday, Buddhism is not only about faith, but doing analysis, examination through reason. And so, when you gain conviction in the teaching through this kind of analysis, and then it can make help in transforming one's mind, and thereby you can have this inner strength to face any kind of difficulties and problems. And then you also are able to make this life meaningful. And when you're able to do this in this life, it will also have impact in the next lives, life after life. So doing Dharma has to fulfill the to make transformation within oneself. So otherwise, it doesn't serve the purpose. So even if when you are doing some business, engaged in economic dealings, you will actually check how you can make the greatest profit and what are the means to do that and so forth. So similarly in the teaching, you need to actually analyze and see what are those states of mind which actually disturb one's peace of mind temporarily in the short term as well as long term, and then also see those states of mind which in the short term as well as long term have benefit for yourself. And so those states of mind which are faulty, which bring about suffering, are all related to, linked to ignorance. So because of our clinging to true existence, independent existence and things, we get the notion of an exaggerated outlook on things, and thereby the destructive emotions arise in us. So these are all rooted in a totally distorted view, or totally distorted mind, whereas the good qualities that we can build up in our mind are actually the results of valid cognition, proper knowledge. And therefore, there is support of these. As the 400 verses of Aryadeva says, just as the physical faculty permeates all other faculties, sensory faculties, likewise ignorance permeates all other afflictive mental afflictions. And so when we talk about ignorance, it is a total misconception, and there is this lack of knowledge of the reality of things. And 400 verses also says, seeing dependent origination, you will not have ignorance, and therefore, right, with all your might, you should explain this to others. So when you understand that ignorance has no sound basis, then it loses its strength gradually and dissolves. And so most of the problems that we face are because of our self-cherishing attitude. So as opposed to this, cherishing others over oneself is marvelous, and which is developed through the practice of equaling and exchanging self and others. So, since in terms of the teaching of the Buddha, we need to train in a sequential manner. And therefore, today I wish to do the Upasaka vows, the layperson's vows. So the Upasaka, and Upasaki, the male and female practitioners with vows, and the bhikshus and bhikshunis. Together with these, together the four comprise of these four Sangha members. So this is given in some commentary. So these are the four Sangha members, the two from the lay community and two from the monastic celibate. And so as it is said, one's own disciples, comprising of the four Sangha members, with the precepts and vows. So because of that, I usually give the Upasaka vows, Upasaka or Upasaki vows. And so you take the full, the complete 5 precepts. So of course there are Upasaka or Upasakis with who take only 1 or 2 or few of them, most of the vows, all 5. So here we are doing all 5 precepts, which are not killing human beings. So even if you don't take this vow, you cannot kill human beings, and you cannot also steal others' possessions, because then you land in jail. So you would abstain from committing these grave actions of killing people and stealing others' possessions because of law. And then keeping chastity, or not committing sexual misconduct, not trying to push yourself in between couples. And then there is the 4th one, which is the grave lie, claiming something which is ordinary to be extraordinary. So this is something the ordinary people do not have much risk, but people like me who sit on a throne, who are given some kind of a title like Vajradhara and so forth. And so they may pretend to be, although they have no qualities to be like that. So there is this risk for the... And then the 5th one is not taking alcohol. So the best is not to drink alcohol. So when Ling Rinpoche, my late senior tutor was alive, he gave this the Upasaka vow to an elderly Tibetan, and when he explained these precepts, he said, "You cannot take alcohol." And this elderly Tibetan said, "I cannot." He was actually scratching his head and said that I cannot give up alcohol. So Ling Rinpoche, being a great bodhisattva himself, compassionate, and he said, then in that case, he said you should not take too much chang, but alcohol, but a little. And so I would also say the same to you, not to take alcohol too much to the point of getting drunk. So if you actually, as a father of the family, do not get drunk by taking too much alcohol, then don't get drunk, then your wife will also be happy. Otherwise, it would be very uncomfortable inconvenient for your wife. So Shinto followers drink some rice chang You drink very little. So the best is to give up alcohol completely. And even if you are not able to do that during ceremonies and celebrations, when you feel tired, then you may take a little bit of chang. And so these are the 5 precepts that you would be taking. The Buddha himself has said that the sages do not wash away the sins of sentient beings, nor do they remove the suffering with their hands, nor do they transfer their own realization. But regarding all sentient beings equal, like the only child, how do they actually, the Buddhas, help sentient beings? So the Buddha said, the sentient beings' sin or non-virtues cannot be washed away. So the suffering itself cannot be removed by his hands, and the cause of suffering, the non-virtues, cannot be washed away with water, nor can they transfer their own realization to others. So how do they actually help us, benefit us? It is by teaching reality, the truth, that the Buddhas lead sentient beings to liberation. So, by helping disciples realize emptiness, the truth of emptiness, and together with it, that of being supported by that of bodhicitta, that's how the Buddhas lead sentient beings. And so on the basis of the 2 truths, in other words, as Master Nagarjuna says, all the Buddha's teachings are based on the 2 truths, the conventional and the ultimate. So the Buddha actually has given us teaching whereby he says that being compassionate, altruistic to others is the source of happiness. And therefore, the Buddha shows us the path as to what is right and what is wrong, through which he helps us. And then, after his enlightenment, for 49 days, the Buddha actually didn't give any teachings saying that I have found or discovered this nectar-like dharma, which is profound, peaceful, free from elaboration, luminous, and unconditioned. Even if I were to teach it to others, no one will understand it. Therefore, I shall remain silent in the forest. And so, after saying this, then when certain people found that the Buddha's behavior and so forth are very special, amazing, then they requested teachings. And therefore, he said, this is the true suffering. This is in the eyes of the Aryas, this is the true origin of suffering in the eyes of the Aryas, and so forth. And so this teaching comprised the foundation of Buddha Dharma as the wisdom and of the disciples increased further, strengthened further, and when they actually analyzed what is meant by the true cessation and true path, especially what is meant by emptiness and selflessness more, when people delved into these teachings more, he gave the second turning of the wheel of Dharma. So these are really very high-quality teachings. And within this teaching, there is the explicit teaching of emptiness and implicit teaching of the progression along the path. So on the basis of the truth, so the progression along the path the path system itself is used as the basis for establishing emptiness in this. And therefore, Master Nagarjuna explained the explicit teaching of emptiness in his writings, whereas Master Asanga explained the implicit teachings of the perfection of wisdom. And so, Asanga's teachings are based on Maitreya's teachings, such as Abhisamaya, Al-Ankara, and so forth, the 5 treatises of Maitreya. And so, you may have heard about the Abbot Wensik, who wrote a commentary on the Unraveling of the Thought Sutra. And so, I heard that Wensik was Korean. So his commentary on Sandhi Nimuchana Sutra, I have read this commentary, which is in 2 volumes. And according to this, it is written that Maitreya, the name Maitreya, was given to the son because of being the son of the mother who had that name. And so, there seems to have been a human Maitreya, because the Maitreya, who is said to be residing in Tushita, of course, has no human parents as such. So, as I do not believe in the Mount Sumeru, I don't know where this 33 ram of 33 should be placed. So whether the Ashuras are there or not, I don't really care. They're demigods. They are said to be full of jealousy. So it doesn't really matter whether they exist or not. So in other words, whatever the case of Maitreya may be, but his 5 treatises are there that we can have access to them. And so the Abhisamaya Al-Ankara and also Sutra Al-Ankara, which also goes through the Bodhisattva practices, and then the Mahayana Uttara Tantra, dealing with the Tathagata Garbha and so forth, are marvelous teachings. So the 2 masters, Master Nagarjuna and Asanga, were the 2 humans who actually interpreted the teaching of the Buddha. In Bhaviveka's Tarka Jwala, the blaze of reasoning, Master Asanga and Vasubandhu were quite shameless, he says, to interpret the Buddha's teaching as differently from that of Master Nagarjuna, who was prophesied by the Buddha himself, he says. And in Abhisamaya Al-Ankara, there are the 10 instructions given, and so this should be used. So dup means the practice itself, and it refers to the nature of the practice, which is emptiness, or the 2 truths. And then the focus of the meditation are the 4 noble truths. And so on the basis of the 2 truths, you understand that 4 truths, if there is no teaching that could be given on cessation and the path, well, there's no reason why the Buddha should give teaching on suffering and its cause. If there is no freedom from suffering and its causes, and therefore, because there is a way out of suffering and its cause, the Buddha very proudly, very confidently taught that of the cessation and path. So I have a story to tell. An Indian man attended some teaching in the Tibetan Library of Tibetan Works and Archives in Dharamsala, and he heard about bodhicitta and compassion and so forth, which was very inspiring for him. And then next time he attended another teaching, and it was teaching that was given on hell realms. And he said the hot ones are too hot to bear, and cold ones also too cold to bear. And so then he felt disparate to attend any more teachings, he said. So the Buddha actually gave teaching on how we can actually become free from suffering forever and reach nirvana, this liberation. And so true cessation, which is peaceful, excellent, and the emergence, definite emergence, is something marvelous. And so when we do introduction or give introduction to Buddhism, in Tibet the custom was to follow the genre of Lamrim, the stages of the path teaching. Rinpoche himself wrote the great treatise of the stages of the path, and then the medium length stages of the path, and then the short Lamrim. And so this follows the pattern of teaching as found in the Bodhipattha Pradipa, the lamp for the path to enlightenment. And so it was this genre of teaching emphasizes the importance of guru devotion or reliance on a master, spiritual master. So Lamrim Chemo, the great stages of the path to enlightenment, is a marvelous teaching that Tsongkhapa wrote. He actually goes through the guru to whom you rely on, the disciple who relies on him, and how the disciple relies on the guru, and so forth. And Tsongkhapa says, without taming oneself, there's no way one can tame others. Therefore, one should tame oneself first. And in this, it's not enough just to be able to say this is practice because of the teaching of the Buddha, but one should be able to tame oneself through the practice of the three trainings. And so this really is a big kind of a summation of the teaching. So usually I actually find the style of teaching that is found in the Lamrim teachings, particularly in the follows the pattern of the teaching, following the teaching according to the dull-witted or persons, whereas Lamrim Jambe Shelung, the sacred words of Manjushri by the fifth Dalai Lama, is slightly different. So with regard to the three trainings to transform oneself, in the Sutra Al-Ankara, the criteria for a spiritual master is given as tenfold. So by having good understanding of the qualifications of a master well, according to this kind of teaching of Sutra Al-Ankara, then you could actually go on. Having been introduced well, you will be able to see how you can see the Lama to be the embodiment of the Buddha and so forth. Otherwise, the Lamas take advantage, and they could mislead their disciples, which has happened in Tibet. So Lamrim Chemo is the main text that we should focus on. And most of the Lamrim texts don't have much explanation when it comes to the insight section, whereas Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chemo deals with the insight section in great detail. So when you understand the teaching based on this, you will be able to draw and develop this faith in the teaching based on reason and understanding. So what was I saying? So first we'll have the Upasaka or Upasaka layperson's vows. Please raise your hands who wish to take the layperson's vows. So that's good. Are you sure? Are you sure? You're not actually imitating just because the person next to you raised their hands? So to train in the Dharma in a sequential manner, first we will have the Upasaka layperson's vows. So you are going to take the Upasaka vow with all 5 precepts, observing all 5 precepts. Will not. So I think it should we should be able we should do with the Namo Dharmaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. So Buddha is the teacher. So in Buddhism we have 3 objects of refuge. So the reason. So these 3 are the 3 objects of refuge. Buddha as the teacher, the Dharma as the actual refuge, and the Sangha, the assistance on the path. So the actual transformation within oneself has to happen through one's own thinking, so that through your application of your mind, thinking through, you are able to control your emotions more and more. And then when you reach the path of seeing, you develop the true path, which actually helps to and serves as antidote to overcome certain negative emotions and mental afflictions, and then you attain true cessation. And so these 2 comprise true path. The actual Dharma. And so because of this, you are able to overcome the suffering and its causes, and therefore the person who taught the 4 Noble Truths, suffering, its origin, cessation and true path, is the Buddha. So the Buddha gave his teaching, and this teaching that he gave must first be listened to. And having listened to the teaching, heard about the teaching, studied it, then you actually contemplate, reflect on it, and gain conviction in the teaching. And having gained the conviction through reflection, you familiarize with it over and over again, and thereby reach that of the path of seeing. And such a person who has reached that path is called a Sangha. So there have been many great masters of the past who have actually spent their whole life in the practice of the Dharma. So they are the ones who are examples, who serve as examples, our role models. So these are the 3 refuges: Buddha as the teacher, Dharma as the actual refuge, and the Sangha as the assistance on our path. Dharma does not refer to the scripture, the books, but the content of the books are the true cessation and true path. And so Vasubandhu says there are the 2 types of teachings of the Buddha, the realization and the scripture. And preserving them is only through practice. And so we all have Tathagata Garbha, the Buddha nature, as the Mahayana Uttara Tantra says. So with regard to Tathagata Garbha, it is this empty nature of the mind of sentient beings who are full of defilements. And so these defilements can be overcome. So when we talk about the application of the path within, to make transformation within, to overcome our defilements, it's like a battle between the truth and the false. So the faults that are within us, such as ignorance and so forth, and misconceptions, they are something that we can overcome completely. And we have the potential, the quality, the seed for the qualities of path and the realizations within ourselves. So all of us have the Tathagata Garbha or Sugata Hridaya, this Buddha nature within ourselves. So of course, at this stage, we are all ordinary beings full of, under the sway of mental afflictions and karma. But we have the seed or the course for becoming someone like the Buddha Shakyamuni himself. And therefore, when you say Namo Buddhaya, you are taking refuge in the Buddha. So he who is someone who gave teaching without relying on any others but from his own experience. So he is someone who is called the causal refuge for us. So he serves as the cause for us to attain the same stage. And so, through our practice, we actualize the true path within ourselves, and then we become a Sangha. And so, the meaning of not looking for Buddhahood somewhere else means this. And so, the main aim is our own goal of becoming a Buddha, realizing the Dharma within ourselves, actualizing the true path, true cessation and true path and cessation within ourselves, thereby becoming a Sangha and finally becoming a Buddha. So this is our main aim when we take refuge. Now, in order to be able to have the experience of true cessation and true path, first step is to refrain from physical non-virtuous actions. And so in the Pratimoksha, the individual liberation vows, the emphasis is given on restraining bodily and speech non-virtues committed by them. And then in the Bodhisattva Yana, then you actually restrain your mental afflictions. So please touch your forehead or crown, throat, and heart 3 times. Please repeat these in Sanskrit. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya. At the end, when you say Namo Sangaya, feel convinced that you have received the Upasaka or Upasaki for males vows with the 5 precepts. If you feel that you may not be able to keep all 5, you may still think of receiving either 4, 3, 2, or just 1. So according to your own ability, you may take any of these 5 vows or all. So if possible, all the precepts, 5 precepts. In other words, killing human beings and stealing others' possessions, of course, should not be because of fearing the law, but for attaining nirvana. Please repeat, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. So this completes the Upasaka vows. So next I'll do the Bodhisattva vows. It will also come in the actual initiation as well. So the Sanskrit tradition of Buddhism that has spread to Tibet comprise of the external practice of Pratimoksha, Vinaya, and then internal practice of Bodhisattva Yana, and then the secret practice of Tantrayana. So we have the monastics here, and also lay people who have taken vows. So that comprise the external Pratimoksha vow, and next is the internal the vow of the Bodhisattvas. So the Buddha gave the Vinaya teachings, beginning with telling his disciples to wear the lower garment, in a cylindrical shape and so forth. And then he gave the teachings of the Bodhisattva Yana, and we have the lineages of the extensive path and the profound lineage of the view. And then there are those of the, so the lineage masters of these 2 lineages, as well as those of the Kirtigarbha and so forth, the 8 close Bodhisattva disciples of the Buddha. And imagine the Buddha masters Nagarjuna and his followers, as well as the profound lineage, and then the extensive lineage that comes from the Master Asanga and his brother and down. So lineage masters of these 2, and also the great upholders of the Dharma of Tibet, from the Sajjan Nyingma Gelug Kagyu and so forth, the traditions of Tibetan Buddhism. So it seems that it seems the term the lineage of the blessings was actually started by Dromtempa, but I don't find it quite right to have a separate lineage like that, because in the extensive lineage of the path, we are actually talking about the practice of bodhicitta. So in Tibet, the great classic texts, such as the 5 treatises of Maitreya and the Mula Madhyamaka Karika and so forth, seems to have been left as theoretical texts, and then people kind of pretend to be following some tantric teaching. So in other words, here we should imagine the profound view lineage that comes down from Master Nagarjuna and so forth, and Asanga and so forth, that forms the extensive path. And then in the Nyingma tradition, there are the Nyingma tradition, and then the And so imagine the masters of the Nyingma lineage, this Kagyu and Sakya, Marpa, Mipa, and Milarepa, and Tagbolhaji, Gadmboha, and so forth, and then Sakya Lamas, and Tsongkhapa, and Gungyen Tobowa, and so forth of the Jonang tradition, and Tsongkhapa and his disciples for forming the Gelug tradition. So imagine all the lineage masters of these different traditions of Tibetan Buddhism, and then the Chinese lineage that has come down from, including Xuanzang and so forth, who spread Buddhism to Tibet, and similarly the masters of Japan and Korea, and there may be others. So for over thousands of years, there have been all these great masters who have spread the Dharma in different lands, and so these are the objects of refuge. So have a clear vision or visualization of them in the space around the Buddha, as I said before, and also in Bodhisattva Charyavatara it says, oh, it doesn't matter, I don't remember. Without exchanging one's own happiness and joy with the suffering of others, leave alone reaching Buddhahood itself, but even in samsara you will not have happiness. And so it says, all joys and happiness in the world come from wishing others to be happy. All suffering and misery in the world comes from selfish motive, wishing oneself to be happy. And there is what needs to say more. Look at the Buddha and the sentient beings. And so when we talk about this altruistic intention, we don't need to talk about religion as such. Even in the day-to-day life, we can see the impact of altruism, positive impact of and then we can also, the Bodhisattva Charyavatara also says, which intelligent, which sensible person would feel discouraged to ride the horse of bodhicitta, which leads one from bliss to bliss without despair. And so, for temporary happiness and joy, and long-term happiness for oneself, one happiness for oneself and happiness for others, and to serve the Dharma and to serve the sentient beings, you should cultivate and meditate on bodhicitta. So even at the time of your death, you should have this feeling that you will die while the bodhicitta is active in you without separating from bodhicitta. And so when you are able to actually bring up the bodhicitta within yourself, active bodhicitta within yourself, and die, then you will be able to have the opportunity to have a good rebirth, so that you would be able to engage in the study and the practice of the teaching of the 17 Nalanda masters. I can guarantee you this 100%. And so imagine all these masters around the Buddha and take. So we'll not say all the prayer of the seven-limb prayer. Yawa chungse dage chi saba tamje dobe chanchup chirungo chujin shaba tan jeso yirang kuishin so Yawa chungse dage chi saba tamje dobe chanchup chirungo. I dedicate all virtues that I've collected through making prostrations, making offerings, making rejoicing, confessing misdeeds, and requesting the Buddhas to turn the wheel of Dharma and to not pass away for the full enlightenment. So the Mongolian text is missing. Otherwise, look at page 158 for English. Look at page 154 in English for the English text. Generating the awakening mind with a wish to free all sentient beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach the essence of enlightenment. So the Tibetan is on 154, Tibetan 154, I think Japanese on 155, and Chinese on 156, Korean on 157, I think, English on 158, maybe Russian on 159. So first we'll do the generation of the aspirational bodhicitta. All sentient beings across the expanse of space are equally not wanting suffering but wanting happiness. So in other words, thinking that this is how what sentient beings are. So you are a single person in one individual, but others are limitless. And so if you are able to think of helping others more than oneself, giving up for oneself, one's own happiness for the others is a wise person. Whereas if you only think of yourself alone and disregard others' happiness, then that's foolish. So we have this human brain, unlike animals. If you only think with a selfish motive, it's like animals. So the animals have better, a more acute sense of hearing and smell and sight and so forth. So, but we are different from these animals because of our marvelous brain. So this is, we can think about a long future, and so this is the quality of our own brain and our intelligence. So at this time, while I'm born as a human being with these marvelous qualities, I have met with the Dharma, you should think. So in order to bring happiness and benefit for all sentient beings, have this determination, make this determination to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And with this in mind, please fold your hands together. With a wish to free all sentient beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach the essence of enlightenment, enthused by wisdom and compassion, diligently for the sake of sentient beings. In the presence of the Buddhas, I shall develop the mind for perfect awakening. With the wish to free all sentient beings, I shall always go for refuge to the all Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach the essence of enlightenment, enthused by wisdom and compassion, diligently for the sake of sentient beings. In the presence of the Buddhas, I shall develop the mind for perfect awakening. With a wish to free all sentient beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach the essence of enlightenment, enthused by wisdom and compassion, diligently for the sake of sentient beings. In the presence of the Buddhas, I shall develop the mind for perfect awakening. So merely having generated this kind of aspiring bodhicitta has great benefit, not only leaving at that, but by taking the engaging bodhisattva vow to serve all sentient beings, to benefit all sentient beings. So not only wishing to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, but to actually be practical by doing what is good, beneficial to others as best you can, so that you are able to collect and gather the causes for becoming a fully enlightened being, a Buddha. As Master Nagarjuna says, by collecting the two stores of merit and wisdom and completing them, may I be able to attain the two supreme Buddha bodies, which are the Rupakaya and Dharmakaya. So the merit refers to accumulating our practice of generosity and so forth, whereas the wisdom comprises that of the meditation on emptiness. And so through these two stores of merit and wisdom, you actually are being practical in accumulating these two to reach the two Buddha bodies. Whatever you may challenges you may face, you are saying you are actually making determination to practice them even at the cost of your life. And so on the same page, 158, 154 for Tibetan. So I seek refuge in the three jewels is the practice of taking refuge in the three jewels. So here, now the Dharma refers to the Bodhisattva Yana Dharma. So in the above case, we can relate to all three vehicles, teaching of all three vehicles, but here the Dharma refers to Bodhisattva Yana Dharma, and the Sangha refers to Bodhisattvas, Arya Bodhisattva Sanghas. So having developed, and then the next verse says, I shall generate the mind for awakening. And then after that, having developed the mind for his awakening, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. So you are inviting sentient beings as your guests. If you invite someone to your house, you will not be leaving your plates and cups empty in front of the person. But in order to fulfill their wish and desire, what you do is engage in the Bodhisattva practices, such as the practices leading to higher rebirths, and which is a temporary goal, and then that of the definite goodness and the highest enlightenment, the supreme enlightenment. So Bodhisattva practices are those practices which only bring benefit and happiness to others. Not even the slightest suffering to others it brings. And so it says, I shall engage in the delightful, sublime, enlightened conduct. May I attain Buddhahood to benefit all sentient beings. So you make this determination to bring all sentient beings to the stage of Buddhahood. Whatever you do with your body, speech, and mind, you are dedicating these for the benefit of other sentient beings. So with this, you should have the determination to engage in the Bodhisattva deeds for the benefit of others. And the vows of Bodhisattvas comprise of these 18 rude downfalls, abstaining from them, and then the 46 secondary infractions. So the principal practice of Bodhisattva vows is to restrain the selfish motive. So Many of us do say the 6-session Guru Yoga and so forth. Now please repeat, I seek refuge in the three jewels. I confess each and every misdeed. I rejoice in the virtues of deeds of all beings. I take to heart Buddha's enlightenment. I seek refuge until to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, until I'm enlightened. To fulfill the interests of oneself and others, I generate the mind for awakening. Having developed the mind for highest awakening, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall engage in a delightful, sublime, enlightened conduct. May I attain the Buddhahood to benefit all sentient beings. Please repeat it for the second time. I seek refuge in the three jewels. I confess each and every wrong actions. I rejoice in the merits of all beings. I take to heart the state of Buddhahood. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. And I do so to attain an enlightened mind in order to fulfill the aims of myself and others. Having developed the spirit of highest enlightenment, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall fully enact the supreme enlightened conduct. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. At the end of this repetition, so at the end of the third repetition, when you say, may I attain Buddhahood to benefit all sentient beings, you should feel that those of you who have taken Bodhisattva views and caused decline to it, recover them, and those who have not taken it before, receive a fresh set of the Bodhisattva vows. I seek refuge in the three jewels. I confess each and every misdeed. I rejoice in the virtues of all beings. I take to heart Buddha's enlightenment. I seek refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly. To fulfill the interests of oneself and others, I generate the mind for awakening. Having developed the mind for highest awakening, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall engage in the delightful, sublime, enlightened conduct. May I attain Buddhahood to benefit all sentient beings. Today my life has borne fruit. I have attained excellent human existence. Today I am born into the Buddha's family, and now I have become Buddha's child. Now, come what may, I shall act in accord with this lineage, never causing this impeccable, noble lineage to be tarnished. So when you actually call on others for the feast of happiness, seeing them, regarding them as your near and dear ones, there's no one whom you can call as enemies and adversaries. For ordinary people with ordinary thoughts, of course, could have this kind of feeling of adversaries and enemies. But for a bodhisattva, someone who thinks about bodhicitta, does not have. So they are close to your heart, and they are not ones, these so-called enemies, adversaries, and so forth, are not to be driven away. So when you actually think about this kind of thing in this way, you really feel relief, as if you're free. Otherwise, you may say, oh, there's a spirit ghost here and there. In Potala, when I was young, people used to tell me that in such and such area there are ghosts and so forth. And when I pass through those areas, I actually feel the goosebumps. I get goosebumps. So when you call on sentient beings as your guests for the Feast of Enlightenment, then, of course, this is true liberating experience. So with regard to this 18 root downfalls and 46 secondary infractions, you should study about Bodhisattva vows, like and according to the 20 verses of Bodhisattva vows and so forth. If you find the translations in your languages. So mainly the Bodhisattva practice comprises of doing whatever is beneficial for others and not harming others at all. From the depths of your heart, So we are going to go through the praise to the Buddha for teaching dependent origination on page 136. This was written by Master Tsongkhapa, Rinpoche. So when he was around 16, he moved from Amdo region to the central Tibet, and in his native land he was actually taken care of by Chöje Dundrup Rinchen, and he was given instruction as to how he should go about with his study in verse form, what he should study and how he should study and the sequence and so forth. And then he went to Sangpu monastery and so forth, where there were studies of philosophical texts, and he sat for examinations as well. And then gradually, as his wisdom and intelligence increased and strengthened further, so this has to do with the wisdom of emptiness. For that, he did meditation on Manjushri. And then in Gadong, when he was doing a Manjushri practice, he had a vision of Manjushri sitting in a circle of blue light. And since then, he had visions of Manjushri whenever he wanted. And so when he inquired about the middle way view, the Madhyamaka view, Manjushri gave him a very terse teaching, and Rinpoche said he couldn't understand. And Manjushri told him, you don't worry, you should study further and also accumulate merit and purify negativities. So just having a vision doesn't mean that you gain enlightenment like that. And that, when he was giving extensive teachings in Sangpu or somewhere, Manjushri in a vision told him to go into retreat, into hermitage. So then Manjushri was told that leaving all this teaching to disciples and so forth behind, people would actually criticize me. There would be backbiting by people. And so this is something which is serving the Dharma, isn't it? And Rinpoche was told this by others. If you leave all these disciples behind, while you are serving the Dharma, people, it would harm your, contribution to the Dharma, and people would criticize you. And Rinpoche also thought the same. And he related this to Manjushri, and Manjushri said, whether you will be able to help the Dharma or not, I would know. Whether if people criticize you, be patient. And he went to Hermitage with 8 of his disciples. One of them was Dr. Jambe Gyaltso from Amdo. So Dr. Jambe Gyaltso actually took juniper seeds, and he even got this nickname, Lama Shungdrupa. And Rinpoche did his practice of purification through prostrations and so forth. And some of the other disciples also took what is known as extraction of the essence as their food. And at one point, after doing this purification practice and accumulation practice, he saw in a vision Master Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita, Chandrakirti, Arya Deva, and some even include Bhaviveka. And so one of the persons in this vision had a very dark blue complexion, and he was said to be Buddha Palita, and Buddha Palita was said to have said to be holding a Buddha Palita commentary on Mulamadmika Karika, and this was touched on Tsongkhapa's head in the vision. And that morning, Tsongkhapa and that morning, Tsongkhapa received a text of the commentary, Buddha Palita, and with that, while reading that book, he actually was able to complete his analysis into the view of emptiness, as he says in the three principal aspects of the path. At some point, without alternating and so forth. And so he wrote this text in praise of the Buddha for teaching Tibetan origination. And when I was young, I was able to memorize this text in one day, one morning. And if you could also memorize and recite this text, it would be beneficial. I received the transmission from Gen Rigzin Tempa, Kinori master, and he's, I think, received it from Kansar Doji Chang. He who speaks. So these are the first lines are Namo Manchu Gokaya, the homage to Manjushri, and then he who speaks on the basis of seeing, this makes him a knower and teacher unexcelled. So these 8 points, or what are known as the 8 extremes of decrease and increase, with regard to the nature or essence, and then with regard to time, annihilation and impermanence, permanence with regard to the objects that are coming and going, and with regard to name or symbols, signs, there is the one and many and so forth. Of course, these do exist in conventional terms, but when you do analysis into the final nature of things, nothing whatever has anything so-called birth and death, permanence and annihilation, coming and going, and one and many, and so forth. So, by seeing So it's giving the teaching on the dependent origination from by himself, through his own knowledge and power. He becomes the teacher, knower unexalt, and teacher unexalt. So, I bow to you, O conqueror, you who saw dependent origination and taught it. Whatever degenerations there are in the world, the root of all this is ignorance. You taught that it is dependent origination, the seeing of which will undo this ignorance. So ignorance is the root of our suffering, and the antidote, the counterforce to it is not bodhicitta, love, compassion, but the wisdom realizing emptiness. So how can an intelligent person not comprehend that this path of dependent origination is the essential point of your teaching? So all the religious traditions have the practice of submitting oneself to one's higher power or refuges. The reason for doing that is to be free from suffering. So in Buddhism, ignorance is seen as the root of suffering, and to do away with it, you need to develop the knowledge, seeing the reality and truth, which goes against this ignorance. This being so, who will find, O Savior, a more wonderful way to praise you than to praise you for having taught this origination through dependence? And then next, it says in a sutra, what comes through condition has no birth, it has no essence of birth, and so forth. And therefore it says, whatsoever depends on conditions, that is devoid of intrinsic existence. What excellent instruction can there be more amazing than this proclamation? So when you actually search for the identity of things within themselves, what is designated, you cannot pinpoint anything as being this or that, but still they affect us, and therefore they do exist. And the way they exist is by way of our conceptual designation. So on the basis of different conditions coming together, conceptually designating something shows that it doesn't have any existence, objective and existence. So somewhere in a text it is mentioned that there are three types of dependent origination. One is the dependent origination in terms of causality, and then the second is dependent origination in terms of the whole depending on parts, whole and parts. And then the third is the mere nominality and designation. So this is only understood by those Madhyamakas who understand that nothing whatever has any objective existence. By grasping at it, the child is strengthened bondage or extreme views. For the wise, this very fact is a doorway to cut free from the net of elaborations. So when you actually relate dependence in terms of causality, what you find is that it's not just because you project something, that something exists, but because there are causes, they bring about their results. So, by grasping at it, the childish strengthen bondage to extreme views. For the wise, this very fact is the doorway to cut free from net of elaborations. So the effect depends on its cause, and the cause itself in turn is dependent on the result. Because there is something that can be helped to bring about. You can say there is something that actually brings about that very thing. So the cause has to be posited in relation to its effect. Although the effect comes later and cause precedes it, it's not the case that the cause arises from the effect itself, but because of a certain thing that arises later, something that which brings about it is called a cause. Since this teaching is not seen elsewhere, you alone is the teacher, like calling a fox a lion for a Tirthika, it would be a word of flattery. So he is a wondrous teacher. He is a wondrous refuge because of freeing beings from both the extremes of samsara and nirvana, and he is the speaker, wondrous savior. I pay homage to that teacher who taught well dependent origination. To help heal sentient beings, O benefactor, you have taught the peerless reason to ascertain emptiness, the heart of the teaching. This way of dependent origination, those who perceive it as contradictory or as unestablished, how can they comprehend your system? And so for some philosophical schools, the dependent origination becomes the contradictory reason to prove emptiness, whereas for others, it becomes unestablished reason. How can they comprehend? If for you, when one sees emptiness in terms of meaning of dependent origination, then being devoid of intrinsic existence and possessing valid function do not contradict. Whereas when one sees the opposite, since there can be no function in emptiness, nor emptiness in what has function, one falls into the dreadful abyss you maintain. Therefore, in your teaching, seeing dependent origination is hailed, that too, not as an utter non-existence, nor as an intrinsic existence. Verse 15. Therefore, since no phenomena exist other than origination through dependence, and so forth, so samsara, nirvana, suffering, and so forth, bad and good, all are dependently arisen. So I'm waking you up if you are falling asleep. So karma and afflictions, if they are not dependent on others, there won't be any change. So when the Buddha taught selflessness, of course, non-Buddhist practitioners and scholars found it very uncomfortable. But even today, there are people who say that Buddhism is really a good teaching, but then ultimately it says nothing exists. I mean, there are people who say such thing. So verse number 19. It is through the reason of dependent origination that one does not lean towards an extreme. So dependence shows that things have no independent existence, and origination shows that things still, though not intrinsically existent, but then still they do conventionally exist. Verse number 26, intrinsic nature is uncreated and non-contingent. So when you say something is somebody's nature, we would be saying that there's nothing we can do to change that. So intrinsic nature, uncreated and non-contingent, dependent origination, contingent and created. How can these two converge upon a single basis without contradiction? So therefore, whatever originates dependently, so you should study the 24th chapter of Mula Madhyamaka Kariga by Nagarjuna over and over again. In this chapter, the Buddhist realists criticize the Madhyamakas, saying that if nothing exists intrinsically, then you are actually nihilist. And then they say that the Four Noble Truths and the three objects of refuge and nirvana and so forth cannot be tenable. And Master Nagarjuna says, you do not understand the meaning, the nature, and the purpose of. So the meaning of dependent origination means, emptiness means that things are dependently originated. So because of this, dependent origination is the reason that helps to get rid of or overcome both the extremes of nihilism and permanence. Verse number 29. So as I said yesterday, within the objects of knowledge, there are those which are manifest, which are hidden, slightly hidden, and then extremely hidden. Verse number 31, 32. Verse 37. All that you have taught in 38 proceeds by way of dependent origination, that too is done for the sake of nirvana. You have no deeds that do not bring peace. It overcomes all opposing challenges. So when Master Nagarjuna explains emptiness on the basis of dependent origination, no one can actually challenge with good reason. So the suchness or the reality of dependent origination, when you explain it, no one can challenge that. Kamalashila. Kamalashila. So verse number 40, It says it overcomes all challenges. It's free from contradictions between earlier and later paths. It grants fulfillment of being's two aims. So regarding this, Master Kamalashila in his Tattva Samgraha Panjika, which is the commentary on Tattva Samgraha by Chandarakshita, it says that understanding causality, one creates the causes for higher rebirth, and by understanding the dependent origination in terms of designation, then one creates causes for definite emergence. So these are the two aims or goals of sentient beings that they attain. For this system, my joy increases ever more. Verse number 44, 45. 46. It's Bebadza in 56 is a kind of a grass which get entangled with one another. And verse number 48. Amongst the Buddhist philosophical schools, there are those who assert selflessness of persons but not selflessness of phenomena. I've explained it a little bit. In the Chittamatra philosophical school, they make division of categorize phenomena into three natures. Those of the imputed nature, dependent nature, and the perfect nature. So at such a time I studied numerous works of both our own middle way and other schools. My mind became tormented ever more constantly by a network of doubts. And then the Night Lily Grove of Nagarjuna's treatises, Nagarjuna whom you prophesied, so Night Lily treatises refers to Master Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamaka Karika. So in Mula Madhyamaka Karika, it uses the term negation, negative terms, but of course, in later on in chapter 24, you find that all of these are actually asserted on the basis of the reason of dependent origination. And with regard to conventionality of things, it is more explicitly explained in Buddha Palita commentary. Would unravel your unexalted vehicle as it is, shunning extremes of existence and non-existence, illuminated by the garland of white lights of Chandra, well-uttered insights. And so this refers to Master Chandra Kirti's two commentaries on Mula Madhyamaka Karika. One is the Prasana Pada, the clear or lucid words, and then the other is Madhyamaka Avatara, entering the middle way, which are very marvelous texts. So, verse number 53 says, following such a teacher and having become a renunciant, referring to himself, Master Tsongkhapa, having studied the conqueror's words, not too poorly, this monk who strives in the yogic practices, such is the depth of his reverence to this great seer. So this shows how we should go about with developing the faith in the teacher based on understanding his teaching through reason. And therefore, you are able to see the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, as someone who is unequaled teacher amongst the different founding teachers of different traditions. So verse number 55 says in the last two lines, may it always be filled with those who find conviction in the teacher by understanding the teaching's true nature. So Legden Mahakala here refers also to the four-armed Mahakala who has a special connection with Master Nagarjuna. The four-faced Mahakala, I'm sorry. So this hymn entitled The Essence of Well-Uttered Insights, praising the unexiled teacher, the great friend to the entire world, even to the unfamiliar, for teaching the profound Tibetan origination, was composed by the well-read monk Lobsang Tragpa Pel. It was written at the heavenly retreat of Lading on the towering mountain of Odegungel, otherwise known as Garden Number Gyewa Ling. The scribe was Namkha Pel. So this completes the commentary, explanatory transmission of Master Tsongkhapa's praise to the Buddha for teaching Tibetan origination.
Sotar Nang Changsen, Diniv the Jewish. That's all Sanga said. That's Sanga the subject. The session day Sanga Lamiko Yori. Kazashag. Any numerous give said the ship tower tournament, Danapo. Anyway, said Danapo taller.
So as I said earlier, now we have come to the secret Mantrayana teaching, where the subtle, luminous awareness is used to develop into the path, and thereby meditating on emptiness based on the usage of those of the channels, energies and drops. And so one does this practice on the basis of visualizing oneself as a deity, and in the Kriya Yoga there is the emphasis on the external practices of cleanliness and so forth. And then where the practice has the balanced practice relating to the external and internal experience or practice, there is the Charya Tantra. And then there is the Yoga Tantra. And then the Anuttara Yoga Tantra. In Japan, there is it's very prevalent the practice of Dharmadhatu. Vajradhati Vajradhatu practice is very prevalent. That comes under the Yoga Tantra. As I mentioned briefly yesterday also, in the Kagyu Mahayana Mahamudra teaching of Kagyu and the Nyingma Rigpa Sangtel and the pristine awareness, breakthrough into the pristine awareness. And then within the Nyingma tradition, there are the 9 vehicles, and the up to Maha and Anu. The teachings are practiced on the basis of what is known as ordinary mind, whereas the Ati Yoga is practiced on the basis of the pristine awareness mind, the luminous mind itself, which seems to be the parallel to this in the Sarma tradition seems to be reaching the final isolation of mind, and so I find it very helpful to so this particular initiation comes under the Mahayoga, and particularly it comes in the category of Lama Ringzen. So as I have done the preliminary ritual, please make the mandala offering. Please use the blindfold. To signify that you are not yet allowed to see the secrets. And Tantra is said to be something which is practiced in secrecy, and also there is in the Tantric vows not to disclose the secrecy to others who are not fit for that. And even in India, it was practiced very secretly. It wasn't given, the Tantric teachings weren't given in public as such, and so when you do your practice also, it should be done in secrecy, secretly. And then there will be a garland of flower given to you, which you would be using it later when you actually imagine to be going into the mandala to offer to the deities of the mandala. So in all the four tantras, secret mantrayana, there is the visualization of a clear visualization of yourself as a deity. So for a certain reason, you should stop ordinary perception of yourself and so you do analysis of things yourself to check, to try to search for your identity, and then dissolve this ordinary perception. And by doing that, you meditate on emptiness. So from within the state of emptiness, then so you do meditation on emptiness, and within this meditation you withdraw or dissolve this ordinary appearance of yourself, and then you arise into a deity from within this state of emptiness, meditation on emptiness. And therefore this is very important to keep in mind, how you arise from within the state of emptiness into a deity and then see the deity itself as being in the nature of emptiness. Otherwise, so in the 6 yogas or deities of Kriya Tantra also, you do these on the basis of understanding of emptiness. So in any tantric ritual, you come across meditation on emptiness, with the mantras Om Swabhava Shuddha Sarvadharma Swabhava Shuddha Hang and so forth. So you ascertain, your mind ascertains emptiness and that dissolves your ordinary appearance, and then from within that emptiness you arise into the deity, and you see yourself as in the nature of emptiness. So ordinary perception, ordinary clinging are dissolved into emptiness. When you are able to actually maintain that you are a deity, whereby you are able to stop this ordinary clinging, ordinary perception, then you are able to help yourself to overcome the perception of yourself as an ordinary being, and with the visualization of yourself as a deity, and with this pride, divine pride, you actually are able to stop the clinging to yourself as an ordinary being. So otherwise, without having done any meditation on emptiness, just thinking that, oh, I am a deity now, while remaining ordinary, that's a totally distorted perception, as Jesabje has said. And so, for some reason, here you do away with the ordinary perception and ordinary clinging to yourself as an ordinary being. And so ideally, the Lama who gives this initiation must have done the necessary retreat. I have done the Kaje retreat, and also I have done this retreat, the necessary retreat, approximation retreat on this deity several times. So I have taken self-initiation and then made a request to sought permission to give the initiation to the disciples. So there are the 9 Avalokiteshvaras that you should imagine. In the center is the Avalokiteshvara belonging to the Amitabha lineage. And then 4 on 4 petals, and then 4 at the door. So imagine 9 deities in this mandala of Avalokiteshvara. And you are at the eastern door. Please repeat this. Please lead us into this mandala of Avalokiteshvara, who is the embodiment of all Buddhas or conquerors, and mature or ripen and liberate us. Please repeat this. All sentient beings across this, including myself, we take refuge in the 3 roots until we see our own natural phase. We take refuge until we see our own natural phase. So this self-awareness, it mentions the self-awareness, which shows that you do not seek enlightenment from outside. You need to actually see this pristine awareness that is within yourself, which is covered, veiled by obscurations and defilements, and therefore these defilements need to be eliminated, dispelled, and thereby the pristine awareness becomes manifest. So this pristine awareness that is within yourself innately, inherently, dispelling or eliminating all its defilements. In order to be able to do that, until I reach that goal, I take refuge, it says. And next is the bodhicitta. So it says this full, complete enlightenment that is within myself inherently. So what this means is that you have the potential, the basis for attaining the three Buddha bodies. And so to be able to see it nakedly and to liberate all sentient beings, so being able to see it, being able to be introduced to it, for the sake of all sentient beings, I shall practice this in order to help others. So here, imagine the deities of the mandala, and then you do the 7-limb practice. Please repeat this. Lama yidam khandru shik. Yinda peme denla shu. So you are asking the Lama, the Yidam deity, the Dakinis and Tathagatas, and so forth. Mindru sanga chogokur, nyangamida soadip, nyingbo simjen tendo mo, yangda tuenje tuendo shu, yangda doji tuendo shu, yangda tuenje tuendo shu. So you've done the 7-limb prayer to be able to realize the Vajra, ultimate Vajra, the meaning of the Vajra. So having taken the Bodhisattva vows, next is uncommon vow of So in the text there are the samayas of the body, speech and mind. Please repeat these. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 3 times and the 10 directions 4 times. From now until enlightenment, I take refuge in the unsurpassable objects of refuge, the 3 jewels. I'll keep all the vows. I'll keep all the vows of the Dojirik Tamsik, the Vajra lineage, family, and then I'll keep all the vows related to the lotus lineage and so forth. So I'll keep all the 28 roots and the secondary vows of Tantra. And may I be able to overcome all samsara and nirvana and reach that of the full enlightenment. Please repeat the last two. Sanga doji tekwe dombakun dagi malu yonsu sungwarcha. I'll keep all the Vajrayana, secret mantra Vajrayana vows, and may I reach enlightenment. So having made this pledge to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings, in order to lead all sentient beings to the state of Buddhahood, you make this determination and the pledge. Commit yourself to reach Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. So in order to reach that goal as soon as possible, you should cultivate the path, the resultant path, by visualizing it at this stage, and while not wavering from this dharmakaya, you arise into the form body, and therefore, so from this stage on, you actually visualize yourself transforming into a deity from within the state of emptiness, and therefore, through this path, combining you actually create the causes for the two ultimate stages or resultant stages of the clear light and that of the illusory body. So in order to reach the union state of the normal learning stage, you need to develop the union state at the trainee level, and for that you need to develop yourself, visualize yourself into the deity, transforming yourself into a deity from within the state of emptiness. And this is done on the basis of the subtle clear light mind, not just the gross state of consciousness. And so after having stopped that of the 80 conceptions, then you go through the 4 empty states, and then the 4th empty state is this final clear light moment. So even at the near attainment, I mean, there are there is a point where you still have some memory, and then you go into a state where there is no memory. But when you are able to sustain your meditation on emptiness and clear light and so forth, then you'll be able to actually have the memory even at that stage, and then you go through that of the clear light moment of death. And that clear light mind, luminous mind, is used to arise into the path, generate into the path to meditate on emptiness. Therefore, you have the object emptiness, object clear light, which is emptiness, and the subjective emptiness, clear light, which is the subjective mind, the clear light itself. These are combined. And so you have taken the tantric vows. So please repeat it the 3rd time. Taking the tantric vows. Please repeat. I'll take all the Vajrayana vows, and through this I'll liberate all sentient beings, and may I reach that of the Vajradhara state. So in this initiation rite, there's no mention of the all-encompassing yoga mind, but I usually do that during tantric initiations like this. So since we need to lay the foundation for Dharmakaya and also Rupakaya at the result of the resultant state, so bodhicitta, as I explained yesterday also, bodhicitta is the one factor which gives us real true happiness even while we are in samsara. So we are followers of the Buddha and the following, especially the Sanskrit tradition of his teaching. So have this determination to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, to reach Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. So have a clear idea of bodhicitta within yourself, clear experience or of bodhicitta for half a minute or so. So, with this, in order to liberate all sentient, for the sake of all sentient beings, I will become a Buddha. This extraordinary courage that you have developed, this bodhicitta, imagine it transforming into a moon disk at your heart. Moon disk sitting at your heart. So with regards to reaching Buddhahood, you need to, as a means to it, you need to overcome those of the obscuration to knowledge. And then for that, to be able to do that, you need to overcome mental afflictions. And so to do this, to overcome both the obscurations, you need to meditate on emptiness. As I've explained yesterday and also today, what is dependent originated, what arises through dependence is said to be empty, and that is itself designated, and that is the middle way. And what since there's nothing which is not dependent originated, there's nothing, there's not empty. So though things do not have any objective independent existence, yet they appear to us as if they have some independent objective existence. And so here, meditate on emptiness, feeling convinced and ascertaining well that nothing really exists the way they appear to me. Objectively existing. Nothing exists objectively. So we have thought about bodhicitta and also emptiness. So when you think about emptiness, all these appearances kind of dissolve. So this mind meditating on emptiness serves as the basis. And as you see on the Thangka painting, So this mind which is meditating on emptiness itself transforms into Avalokiteshvara with one face and two hands. And you have the three letters Om, Ah, Hum on your crown, throat, and heart. So the meditation on empty bodhicitta, as you have already done, transforms into your bodhicitta transforms into moon disk at your heart, and then the meditation on emptiness, the mind that has meditated on emptiness transforms into a vajra, white color, standing on your moon disk, and therefore pledging that you keep these two principles. Repeat this. Om Sarva Yogacita Upatayami. Om Sarva Yogacita Upatayami. Om Sarva Yogacita Upatayami. This is to pledge that you will not give up these two principles of bodhicittas, the conventional and the ultimate bodhicitta. So we do not actually miss taking food and drinks, drinking tea. So similarly, remember bodhicitta and the view of emptiness 6 times a day. If you familiarize your mind with these two in daytime, then you'll even in your dream, you'll be able to remember it. And so, when you are able to do this meditation on emptiness and bodhicitta, even at the bardo stage, you'll be able to have these two principles actively working in your mind. And in this way, you'll be able to achieve the goal of enlightenment, passing from life to life. In the end, eventually. So, from this day onwards, you begin the step towards enlightenment through the meditation on emptiness and bodhicitta. So 6 times a day, think about it. So because the disciples have arisen into a deities, therefore this offering is made to the disciples as deities. And then there are the. Please repeat this. Namshi lenzebe. Karse marjan gomashi. You are asking the deities, the goddesses, 4 goddesses at the doors, to open the door of the mandala. So the deities, the goddesses are white, yellow, red, and green in color. So imagine that you are entering, you are able to now enter the mandala. So when the 5th Dalai Lama had a vision, from Bodhisangpo's heart emerged the Tibetan king Songtsen Gampo, and Songtsen Gampo took the 5th Dalai Lama into the mandala. So just as the past masters have practiced, the disciples also should follow in their footsteps, as is said. And so the master comes forward and takes the disciples into the mandala. Please repeat these prostration lines. Oh, my mind is the real Avalokiteshvara. I prostrate, seeing the non-dual nature of myself and the deity. Oh, Namo Purushaya Ho.
Sama Shandala, Mana Tamzi Yamajo, Benza Samaya. Then pay the Yimi
Now the disciples are told this disadvantage of disclosing the secrecy of Tantra. So you're given this blessed water to keep the secrecy. And then it's said that if you go against the masters, the Vajra master's words, you'll fall into hell realm. Please repeat these. Please, Vajra holder, think of me. The Vajra Avalokiteshvara's blessings of body, speech, and mind, please bestow them upon me. Please bestow them upon me now.
Lama
So with the fervent prayer that you have made for the blessings of body, speech, and mind of the deity, Avalokiteshvara, so who is not different from the master, from his heart, rays of light, innumerable rays of light are emitted, and Master Avalokiteshvara, who is the special extraordinary deity of this, the Nalanda, glorious Nalanda tradition, comes forth, and numerous Avalokiteshvaras comes forth and dissolves into the disciples, thereby blessing, bestowing the blessing of the body of Avalokiteshvara. So the rays of light emitting from the Guru and the deity in the mandala goes out into the 10 directions and invokes the deities, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and dissolve into you. And then Avalokiteshvara's mantra and symbols also, which symbolize the speech and mind, also come down. Innumerable amounts of them come and dissolve into the disciples, thereby blessing you with the speech, blessing of speech and the mind. So we have the 5 aggregates. When we become so if we are able to become clear which lineage or which Buddha family we have the special connection with, it would be beneficial to do your practices in relation to that particular deity. And so imagine, make your prayer so that your flower would fall on that particular deity, which the Buddha family with whom you have the connection. I offer this invaluable flower in our mandala of Avalokiteshvara. Please, Pipipe Soha. Through the flower in the mandala. Imagine that. So when the flower falls in the center, it's the Akshobhya. Your secret name from this Avalokiteshvara initiation is Akshobhya Vajra.
말이 다 그다음에 그다음에 그 이제 샤도 미기고 요래 에 다른 정도 도스래.
So the main deity belongs to the Amitabha lineage, but in the eastern side of the mandala is Akshobhya. So please put the garland of flower on your head.
고난이 누게 뭐도 누게 고난 일이야. 비비 무구자 에비 계산미. 데도 yes. 비비 무구자 에비 계산미. 다데네 데 미tur 호 지들미게 개부이 지들 직전 저리 싸웠다.
Just as a doctor, eye doctor, removes the cataracts of. Likewise, this who takes away removes the ignorance. Please remove the blindfold. Jnana Chakju Chakshu Parambishaya Pe. So having removed the blindfold, now imagine that you are able to see the deities and the mandala clearly, or the mandala and its deities. So with this we have completed the rituals for entering into the mandala, and next comes the 4 initiations for purifying body, the Vows initiation, and then to purify your body, speech, mind, and then the body, speech, and mind collectively, the stains. You have the Vaasa initiation, secret initiations, wisdom, knowledge initiation, and then the 4th initiation. Collectively, or the stains of body, mind, speech that are shared. Ayami. Please repeat this. Please bestow upon me the initiation of Avalokiteshvara, who is the embodiment of all the Buddhas, and so that I may be ripened and liberated. I, who am a proper vessel, so this is Akshobhya Lokeshvara for the Vaasa initiation. So with the Ratna Lokeshwara, you're given the crown initiation. And then the Vajra initiation of the Vajrachana Lokeshwara. And then the Padma Lokeshwara. Next is the Lokeshwara, Amoga Siddhi Lokeshwara. So Vajrachana Lokeshwara, initiation of the bell. So the Akshobhya Vajra secret name was uttered. Please repeat this mantra. Please bestow on me the Vajra Master Initiation, the irreversible Master Initiation. Please bestow on me. So the disciples, imagine you yourselves at the eastern door and sitting on a lion throne and parasols held above you. So the Vajra is held in the right hand to symbolize great bliss, and the bell in the left hand symbolizing the consort, and then you hold the right and left hand crossed at your heart, symbolizing going in union with the consort. And you are given the ribbons and scripture to symbolize that you should serve other sentient beings. So you have received the Vajra Master Initiation, and therefore you should, to the best of your ability, be kind to people and not to harm others. You should advise them, especially those who are and if it's proper, then you should also explain about bodhicitta and the view of emptiness, and also advise them to recite the mantra of Avalokiteshvara Om Mani Padme Hum. So you should do these things in accordance with the others' predispositions. So generally, you should be able to tell people not to do wrong, but to do good to others. So these are the initiations based on the Vajra, Buddha, Ratna, Padma, and Karma Lokeshwaras, which purify your 5 aggregates, form aggregates, and so forth, and thereby you attain the 5 Buddha wisdoms, such as equality, wisdom of equality, and through to the accomplishment, wisdom of accomplishment. And so with this, we have completed the Vows initiation for purifying one's body. And next comes the initiation of to purify one's speech. And so the root of speech is energy, wind. And so your wind energy is blessed with the secret initiation. And by blessing this wind energy, because it is the mount of the mind or the consciousness, so eventually all the gross wind energies dissolve, and then you are able to make this clear light, luminous clear light awareness, or we call manifest. Please repeat this. Gachen dani loben che chaju samge chugyunke da sangam kuincha ne tumu ishi gedosel Please bless me to actualize that of the Tummo, wisdom of Tummo, the inner heat. So with this vital drop of white and red bodhicitta, may you be blessed, your wind energy be blessed by permeating all your channels and sub-channels. And so when you taste this, Imagine taking this blessing, secret substance, and it spreads all over your body, and the channels and the wheels or chakras of your crown, throat, heart, navel, and secret organ, secret place, and whatever decline there may have been in your the elements are all recovered, and also the wind energies which have stiffened and whatever have been weakened and obstructed are all cleared. And so when you do meditation, your channels are all straightened, cleared, and the wind energies and drops also function properly. And so that this leaves the imprint, makes you a fortunate one to attain illusory body. So the secret initiation is for that purpose of illusory body, attainment of illusory body. Please repeat this. So next is requesting for the wisdom knowledge initiation. So you yourself have visualized yourself as Avalokiteshvara, and in your mind imagine and visualize consort, and then here going into union with the consort doesn't mean, it doesn't have to do with the ordinary sex at all, but you also there is the Vajra cross leket, what is known as the terms used as Vajra cross leket, called channels, Vajra cross leket drops, and then Vajra cross leket, great bliss and emptiness. So, having attained the illusory body, when you again meditate on emptiness, the bodhicitta flows from the crown to the throat, to the heart, from there to the heart, navel, and the secret place, and then again returns all the way to the crown chakra, from the secret place up to navel, navel to heart, heart to throat, and then the crown. And so, in this way, you go through the process of the dissolution of the gross elements, and then you go through the what are known as the three visions of whitish appearance, reddish increase, and blackish near attainment, and then finally that of the clear light nature, the luminous clear light mind, and that is the mind that you use to single-pointedly focus on emptiness, and thereby you create the cause for that of the mind, the enlightened mind of a Buddha, when you become enlightened. So this is about the wisdom knowledge initiation. Next is requesting for the fourth initiation. Please bestow upon me the fourth initiation. Bestow the fourth initiation. So sit in the Vairocana posture of meditation. So whether you are sitting in cross-legged position or full Vajra cross-legged position, or whatever, you should straighten your spine and breathe naturally, so that the flow of air through your nose and mouth are natural, and then so the clear-light mind that has been introduced in the third initiation, which was preceded by the first two initiations of vast and secret initiation. So you, because of the experience of great bliss, the gross wind and mind dissolve, and then you go through the three visions of whitish appearance, reddish increase, and blackish near attainment, and then you attain that of the clear light. And so, while remaining in the clear light itself alone, you will not become enlightened, and therefore you should go into union of the body and the mind. And so, when with the wind energy transforming into the form body, the illusory body, and then you meditate on that of clear light. And so, by this union, you are going into you actually are introduced into this the Rigpa, which breaks through solidity or something. And so, in the Guya Samaja Tantra, the clear light is actualized after the dissolution of the gross adventitious states of mind. Here, the gross states of mind are not necessarily dissolved. Of course, they arise from this clear, the Rigpa, and they dissolve back into the Rigpa. So everything in the universe, the external world of the container and the internal world of sentient beings, of course, because of our karma, which happens because of the gross adventitious mind, so what is mentioned in the Madhyamaka Avatara, where it says the mind is the one which brings about the sentient beings and its world environment, but that is the gross state of mind it's talking about. But here we are relating to this subtle mind, and so as the wind energy dissolves more and more the gross ones into the subtle ones, the subtle mind becomes more and more manifest. So just as we are born from first, starting with the clear light mind, and then the subtle mind, and then increasingly becoming grosser and grosser. And then when we die, everything dissolves back into the subtle, luminous mind. So similarly, it is the case with regard to this external world. Whereas in the internal world, we have the four spaces. You go through the four spaces, and then comes those of the three visions and the 80 conceptions. So as long as there is a mind or consciousness, it is permeated, or it has that innate, luminous mind inherently. And therefore, a Dzogchen master who is really experienced So when this when the master is able to sustain the Rigpa, the meditation on Rigpa itself, the adventitious states of mind do not disturb the meditation, whereas when the adventitious, the gross states of mind become more clinging towards the objects, then you get distraction. And without that distraction into the solidity and so forth of things, you are able to maintain that. And so there's no need to talk about dissolution of the gross states of mind in order to manifest, in order to be able to make this clear light mind manifest in Dzogchen tradition. You're not allowing yourself to be carried away by these clinging and the, distractions, but you maintain that Dzogpa Chenpo, the clear light mind. So because of the movement of the 80 conceptions and its winds, then you create the karmic wind. So in this meditation posture of Vairochana, you sit straight and then clear the wind energy, the voice, source of voice, and just place your mind on meditating on this mere luminous and awareness nature of the mind without distraction. This has to be maintained and sustained. So it says, may I be able to realize, identify this all-pervasive phase. So, placing your mind in this spacious nature without distraction, so in the history, in this history of this initiation, the fifth Dalai Lama's heart was touched by this stick by Songtsen Gampo, holding it in his hand, and so Master appears in the form of Songtsen Gampo now. So Songtsen Gampo comes forth, emerges from the heart of the deity, Master, and holding this hand in his hand, this stick in his hand. He touches your heart, and imagine you are being given this initiation. So this single Dharma stick is straight, smooth, white, and this Sangtel Yeshe, the breakthroughs, the solidity, wisdom, has no good and bad. So in the Nyingma tradition, so the three bodies of the Buddha are referred as the Dharmakaya of the suchness and so forth. So this basic limits are basic mind, innate mind, does not exist anywhere. It is this self-enlightened, self-awareness, and free from all elaborations of the mind, non-conceptual. So I have received the teachings on the 7 treatises of treasuries of Longchen Rinpoche, and I have received teachings on Choying Tzu from Gyabje Trishik Rinpoche, and therefore I have a commitment to read Choying Tzu bit by bit every day. Sometimes I get very busy, so it becomes almost like a obligatory. So if you are able to study Longchen Ramchapa's text, which by understanding Tekcho Tzu, studying Tekcho Tzu and others, and otherwise just reading Choying Tzu itself, you might get some kind of a nihilistic idea. And so you should relate these teachings with the 3 wheels of the Dharma as well. So with this initiation, you become a fortunate one to attain the Svabhavika Kaya body of a Buddha. So in the highest Yoga Tantra, so the innate clear light mind is termed as a Svabhavika Kaya because it has no beginning and no end. And it is a compounded phenomena. So there is an uncompounded aspect of the Svabhavika Kaya and a compounded phenomena aspect of this. So even in the Sarma tradition, there are these 2. So this completes the 4 initiations of Avalokiteshvara, 930. Please repeat this to keep all the vows and commitments. So just as the chief one you have commanded, I will do all of them. From now, I become your, I will carry your words, and please take me as your disciple. She will love to be Sibet Sole to one to one show. So with this, here in Japan this time,
okay. Thank you. Okay.
let's say this prayer of the words of truth. Tenzin kedo chobe kebu nam chuchu nam chu chawa pe war su mi se lengyen chakwe yongen be pamen tuke na we nyamda to soga ne shinen dega kya su oyun zu kebar kanchon che den kedo nam na cho la le pong ye tseme to nyen shinen dega kya su
Thank you.